The hospice room smelled of antiseptic and dying flowers. My wife Rebecca lay in the hospital bed, her once vibrant auburn hair now thin and gray against the white pillow. Pancreatic cancer, they'd said. 6 months at most. We'd gotten 4. I sat in the chair beside her bed, holding her hand, watching the morphine drip that kept her pain at bay. We'd been married for 12 years. 12 years of what I thought was a good life. A normal life. "Michael," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I leaned closer. "I'm here, sweetheart, I'm right here. There's something I need to tell you." Her eyes, still that startling green despite everything, filled with tears. "Before it's too late." "Whatever it is, it's okay," I said, assuming she was worried about some unpaid bill or forgotten birthday. "None of that matters now." "It matters." She gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Michael, I haven't been honest with you." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, there was a knock on the door. The nurse poked her head in, looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Torres, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here. He says he's family, and Mrs. Torres asked that he be allowed to visit." I looked at Rebecca, confused. "Who?" Rebecca's eyes closed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Let him in." The door opened wider and a man walked in. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes. He looked to be around my age, mid-40s, and he was carrying a bouquet of sunflowers. Rebecca's favorite. "Rebecca," he said softly, his voice breaking on her name. She opened her eyes and smiled, actually smiled at him. "James, you came." "Of course I came." He moved to the other side of her bed, setting down the flowers, and took her other hand. "I'll always come when you need me." I stood up abruptly. "I'm sorry, who are you?" The man, James, looked at me for the first time. His expression was complicated, sad, guilty, resigned. "I'm James Morrison," he said quietly. "I'm Rebecca's husband." The world tilted. "That's not funny." "Michael," Rebecca started. "No," I stepped back from the bed. "This is insane. Rebecca, what is he talking about?" "Sit down, please," she begged. "Both of you, I need to explain." "Explain what?" "That you've lost your mind from the morphine." But even as I said it, I saw the truth in her eyes, the guilt, the fear, the resignation. James sat in the chair on his side of the bed, never letting go of her hand. After a long moment, I sank back into my own chair, feeling numb. "I'm married to both of you," Rebecca said, her voice steady despite the tears. "Legally, emotionally, completely. I have been for 8 years." "That's impossible," I said. "Bigamy is illegal, you can't just—" "I know it's illegal, I know it's wrong, but I did it anyway." She looked between us, her face a mask of anguish. "And I'm so sorry." James hadn't said anything since his initial introduction. He just sat there, holding her hand, his face pale. "You knew?" I asked him. "You knew about me?" "No," he said hoarsely. "I found out yesterday. She called me, told me she was dying, told me everything. I almost didn't come, but—" He looked at Rebecca with such naked love that it made my chest hurt. I couldn't let her die without saying goodbye. I felt like I was drowning. How is this even possible?" Rebecca took a shaky breath. "I met James 4 years after we got married, Michael, at a medical conference in Seattle. I was there for work, he was presenting on cardiac surgery. We connected, started talking, started meeting whenever I traveled for conferences." "An affair," I said flatly. "You had an affair." "It started that way," she admitted. "But it became more. James fell in love with me. I fell in love with him, and I couldn't," she sobbed. "I couldn't choose, I couldn't give up either of you." "So you just married him, while still married to me?" "I used my maiden name, changed my appearance slightly, wore contacts instead of glasses, dyed my hair darker. We got married in Oregon, where he lives. I told him I worked remotely, that I traveled for business. I'd spend 2 weeks with you in California, then 2 weeks with him in Portland, back and forth, for 8 years. The room was silent, except for the beeping of machines and Rebecca's labored breathing. "Our daughter," I said suddenly, thinking of Emma, our 10-year-old who was staying with my sister during this nightmare. "Does Emma know?" "No, Emma only knows you as her father, James and I. We don't have children together." James flinched at that, and I realized with a sickening jolt that he must have wanted children with her. "I have a son," James said quietly, "from my first marriage. Rebecca met him a few times. He thought she was my girlfriend who lived in another city." "This is insane," I said again, because I couldn't think of anything else to say. "This is completely insane." "I know," Rebecca whispered. "I know it is. And I know you both have every right to hate me, to walk away right now and never come back. But I'm dying and I needed you both to know the truth. I needed to stop lying before the end." "Why?" I asked, my voice hard. "Why not just take this to your grave? Why destroy us like this?" "Because I couldn't bear the thought of you meeting at my funeral and not knowing. Of you finding out afterward when I wasn't here to explain, to apologize, to face what I'd done." She coughed, and both James and I instinctively reached for water. Our hands collided on the cup and we both jerked back. "This is impossible," James said, speaking for the first time since the revelation. "I can't. I don't know how to process this." "Neither do I admitted. We sat in awful silence. The morphine drip continued its steady rhythm. Rebecca's breathing grew more labored. "How much time?" James asked the question I'd been too afraid to voice. "Days," Rebecca said. "Maybe a week. The doctor said my organs are starting to fail." "Jesus," James breathed. I looked at this stranger, this man who'd shared my wife for 8 years without either of us knowing. He looked devastated, broken, exactly how I felt. "Did you love him?" I asked Rebecca. "Really love him?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "As much as I loved you." "That's not possible. You can't love two people equally." "I did," she insisted. "I do, different but equal. Michael, you were my stability, my home, my partner in raising Emma. You made me laugh. You knew me better than anyone. James was my adventure, my escape, my intellectual equal. He challenged me. He saw parts of me that you never did." "Because you never showed me those parts," I said bitterly. "I know, and that's my fault. All of this is my fault." She was crying harder now. "I was selfish and cruel, and I destroyed 2 good men because I couldn't bear to choose, because I wanted everything." James stood up abruptly. "I need air." He walked out, leaving just Rebecca and me. "I'm sorry," she said once he was gone. "Michael, I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this, Rebecca. Sorry doesn't give me back 8 years of my life. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that every time you said you loved me, you were saying the same thing to him. I meant it every time. That somehow makes it worse." The door opened again. James walked back in, his face set with determination. "I'm staying," he said. "I don't know what this makes me or what this makes us, but I'm not leaving her to die alone or with just—" He gestured at me helplessly. "I can't just walk away." "Neither can I said, surprising myself. "As angry as I am, as betrayed as I feel, she's still my wife, Emma's mother. I can't just abandon her at the end." "So what do we do?" James asked. We looked at each other, 2 men bound together by the most bizarre circumstances imaginable. "We take shifts," I suggested, feeling ridiculous. "Or we both stay," James said. "If she's only got days, I don't want to miss a moment, even if—" He swallowed hard. "Even if I have to share those moments." Rebecca was watching us both with an expression I couldn't quite read. Relief, gratitude, guilt, all of it probably. "Can I ask you something?" I said to James. "Sure." "The conferences, the business trips, was any of it real?" "She really did work in pharmaceutical research," James said. "That part was true. She really did have conferences and meetings. She just used them to maintain the double life." "Did you ever suspect?" I asked. No, never. She was so complete when she was with me, so present, I never imagined she was living an entire other life. He laughed bitterly. I proposed 3 times over the years. She always said she wasn't ready for marriage, that she had commitment issues from her parents' divorce. I believed her, waited, hoped she'd eventually say yes. Then 6 months ago, she finally said yes, and we got married in a small ceremony. 6 months ago, I repeated, right after our 12th anniversary. Jesus, James muttered. The absurdity of it all was starting to make me feel hysterical. So you're the husband, and I'm the other husband. Or am I the husband and you're the other husband? Which one of us is legally married to her? You are, Rebecca said quietly. You were first. James's marriage isn't legal. I committed fraud when I married him. So I'm the mistress, James said, and despite everything, I almost laughed at the bitter irony in his voice. Over the next 3 days, James and I established an uneasy routine. We'd both sit with Rebecca, taking turns sleeping in the uncomfortable hospice chairs. We'd coordinate meals, updates to the medical staff, and the increasingly difficult decisions about her care. We didn't talk much at first. What was there to say? But in the quiet hours, when Rebecca was sleeping and the world outside continued without us, we started sharing stories. James told me about the first time he met Rebecca at that conference in Seattle. How she challenged his presentation on a new cardiac procedure, pointing out flaws in his methodology that no one else had caught. How they'd argued for an hour over coffee, both of them exhilarated by finding someone who could match their intellect. I told him about meeting Rebecca in grad school, how she'd been the only person in our statistics class who actually seemed to enjoy the material. How our study sessions had turned into coffee dates, which turned into dinners, which turned into a relationship. She loved Italian food, James said during one of these conversations. She told me she was allergic to tomatoes, I replied. We looked at each other and James laughed, a hollow, broken sound. She told me she was lactose intolerant. I never ordered cheese on anything for 8 years. She ate cheese with me all the time. God, she really was living 2 completely different lives. On the 4th day, Rebecca woke more alert than she'd been since my arrival. The nurses said this sometimes happened near the end, one last burst of clarity before the darkness. I need to talk to both of you, she said, together. James and I pulled our chairs close to her bed. I know what I did was unforgivable, she began. I know that no explanation will make it right, but I need you both to understand something. This wasn't about either of you being insufficient. This wasn't about you not being enough. Then what was it about? James asked. Fear, she said simply. Fear of choosing wrong, fear of looking back and wondering what if. My parents had a terrible marriage. They stayed together out of obligation and made each other miserable. I always swore I'd never settle, never compromise on love, but then I found it twice. Real, genuine, complete love with 2 different people. And instead of choosing, instead of being brave enough to commit to one life, I chose both. I chose cowardice disguised as abundance. You chose deception, I said. Yes, I chose deception, and I don't expect either of you to forgive me, but I need you to know that everything I felt for you was real. Every I love you was sincere. Every moment of happiness was genuine. She sobbed. I just couldn't bear to give up half of myself. That's what we were to you, James asked quietly. Halves. No, you were both wholes. That was the problem. Michael, with you I was the mother, the partner, the woman building a stable life. James, with you I was the adventurer, the intellectual, the woman chasing dreams. I needed both versions of myself to feel complete. So you made us unknowing participants in your self-actualization, I said bitterly. Yes, and it was cruel and selfish, and I'm sorry. The room fell silent again. What about Emma? I asked. What do I tell our daughter about all this? Tell her I loved her with everything I had. Tell her that my mistakes with you don't change how much I treasured being her mother. Rebecca's voice was getting weaker. And Michael, Don't let your anger at me make you keep Emma from knowing the truth when she's old enough. She deserves to know who her mother really was, flawed and complicated and human. I can't believe you're asking me to do that. I know, but you'll find out someday, death certificates, marriage records, someone will discover the truth. Better it comes from you, with context and love, than from a stranger or a document. James had been quiet. Now he spoke up. Did you ever think about what would happen when you got caught or sick or when one of us figured it out? Every day, Rebecca admitted. I lived in constant terror. Every phone call, every unexpected visit, every time my schedules overlapped, I thought it would be the end. Part of me hoped I'd get caught, that the decision would be taken out of my hands. But another part of me, I wanted forever. Both lives forever. You got 8 years, James said. 8 years of lies. 8 years of love, Rebecca corrected gently. Lies about the circumstances, but the love was real. Rebecca died 2 days later, early in the morning. James and I were both there, each holding one of her hands. Her last words were, "I'm sorry," and neither of us knew which one of us she was talking to. Probably both. The funeral arrangements were a nightmare. How do you plan a service for a woman with two husbands? In the end, James offered to stay away from the main funeral, to let me and Emma have that day without complications. "I'll say my goodbyes privately," he said. "It's the least I can do." But Emma, smart, observant Emma, asked about the man at the hospital. Who was he, Dad? The man in Mom's room. I'd prepared a lie. An old friend, a colleague, someone unimportant. But looking at my daughter's face, I thought about Rebecca's words about truth and context. "Someone your mom cared about," I said carefully. "Someone she hurt by making bad choices. Someday, when you're older, I'll explain more. But for now, just know that your mom was human and humans make mistakes." Emma seemed to accept this, and I felt grateful I had years before I'd have to explain the full truth. The day after the funeral, James called me. "I'm going back to Portland tomorrow," he said, "but I wanted to say, I'm sorry for all of it. I know I didn't know that I was as much a victim as you, but still, I'm sorry your marriage wasn't what you thought it was." "I'm sorry you thought you were building a life with her," I replied. "That wasn't fair to you either." "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "If you'd known, if she'd been honest from the start and said she loved both of us, what would you have done?" I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know, maybe I would have walked away, or maybe I would have tried to share her if I'd known from the beginning. The deception is what makes it unforgivable, not the love. "Yeah," James said quietly. "Same here. I think I could have accepted polyamory if she'd been honest, but this, the secret life, the lies, that's what destroys everything." "She loved you, you know," I said. "I could see it. The way she looked at you, it was real." "She loved you too, different but just as real." He paused. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "I don't know, does it?" "No, but somehow it doesn't make me feel worse either." We talked for another hour, shared more stories, grieved together in a way that felt both wrong and necessary. "Take care of yourself, Michael," James said before hanging up, "and take care of Emma." "You too, James." 3 months after Rebecca's death, I found her diaries. Hidden in the attic, years of journals documenting her double life. I almost burned them without reading. But I didn't. In her words, I found a woman torn apart by her own choices. She'd loved us both desperately, wrestled constantly with guilt, and convinced herself that as long as no one was hurt by what they didn't know, she was doing more good than harm. One entry, written 2 years before her diagnosis, struck me particularly hard. "Saw Michael and Emma at the park today. They were flying a kite and Emma was laughing so hard she could barely stand. Michael looked at her with such pure love, such simple joy. Then I came home to James, the other home, and he'd made dinner, put on my favorite music, and we danced in the kitchen like teenagers. I am the luckiest woman in the world. I'm also the most selfish. How do these two truths coexist? How do I keep living in the space between them? Sometimes I think about confessing everything, about sitting them both down and explaining and hopping against hope they might understand. But I know they wouldn't. Society doesn't allow for loving two people equally. You're supposed to choose. You're supposed to rank your loves, pick the winner, and commit. But what if I can't? What if both loves are equally essential to who I am? What if choosing would mean killing part of myself? I know it's wrong, I know I'm a coward, but I can't stop. I won't stop. Not until I'm forced to. And she hadn't stopped. Not until cancer made the choice for her. I called James and read him the entry. She really believed she couldn't choose, he said wonderingly. She really thought this was the only way. It wasn't, I said. There were 1,000 other ways, honest ways. Yeah, but I guess that's the thing about people. We convince ourselves that our impossible situations require impossible solutions. Do you hate her? I asked. James was quiet for a long time. I don't know. Some days, yes. Most days I just feel sad. For her, for us, for the life she thought she needed to build. Me too, I admitted. 6 months after Rebecca's death, I was cleaning out her office when I found another envelope. This one was addressed to both of us, to Michael and James for after. Inside were 2 letters. Mine read, Michael, by the time you read this, I'll be gone and you'll know everything. You'll know about James, about the double life, about all my lies, and you'll hate me. You should hate me. But I need you to know something. Being your wife was the greatest honor of my life. Raising Emma with you was my proudest accomplishment. Every moment in our home was real. The morning coffees, the late-night talks, the way you'd kiss my forehead when you thought I was sleeping. All real. I didn't love you less because I loved James. I loved you exactly as much as a person can love another person. I was just greedy enough to want that twice. Please don't let my mistakes poison the good memories. Please let Emma know that her mother loved her father deeply, truly, completely. Because I did. I do. Even now. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to choose. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I made you share your life with a woman who was sharing herself with someone else. But I'm not sorry I loved you. That at least was perfect. Forever yours, and I know how hollow that sounds now, Rebecca. James's letter was similar but different, acknowledging the 8 years they'd had, the life they'd almost built, the promises she couldn't keep. We met for coffee a week later, the first time we'd seen each other since the funeral. She really thought love was enough, James said, folding his letter carefully. She thought if she loved us both enough, the circumstances wouldn't matter. But circumstances always matter, I replied. Yeah, they do. We sat in silence, 2 men bound together by the most complicated grief imaginable. Can I ask you something weird? James said. After everything, I think weird is relative. Do you think we would have been friends if we'd met under normal circumstances? I considered this. Maybe. We both loved the same woman. That means we probably have some things in common. Apart from terrible taste in women, James joked weakly. Despite everything, I smiled. Apart from that. We talked for another hour, and then, as we were leaving, James stopped me. Thank you, he said. For what? For not making me the villain in this. For recognizing that we were both victims of her choices. It would have been easier to hate me, to blame me. But you didn't. You loved her, I said simply. That's not a crime. The lying was her choice, not yours. Still, thank you. As I watched him walk away, I realized something. Rebecca had given us both a strange gift, not the gift she'd intended, not the happily ever after she dreamed of, but a gift nonetheless. She taught us that love isn't simple, that people are complicated, that sometimes good people make terrible choices for what they think are good reasons. And she'd left us with each other, 2 men who understood a grief that no one else could comprehend. 1 year later, Emma asked about the other husband on her 11th birthday. Dad, who was that man at the hospital, the one at Mom's funeral who stood in the back. I'd known this day was coming, had prepared for it, but I still felt unprepared. His name is James, I said carefully. Your mom cared about him very much. Like how? Like she loved him while she was married to me. She loved both of us at the same time. Emma processed this with the strange wisdom of children. That's not allowed, is it? No, sweetheart, it's not. Was she a bad person? The question I'd been dreading. No, she was a person who made bad choices. There's a difference. But she hurt you. I remember you being sad even before she got sick. Smart kid, too smart. She did hurt me, and she hurt James too. But Emma, people are complicated. Your mom did something wrong, but she was still your mom. Still the woman who read you bedtime stories and helped with homework and loved you more than anything. Can people be both, good and bad? Most people are, I said honestly. We're all doing our best with what we have. Sometimes our best isn't good enough. Sometimes we hurt people we love. That doesn't erase the love, but it doesn't excuse the hurt either. Emma thought about this. Do you hate her? No, I'm angry sometimes. Sad a lot, but I don't hate her, I miss her. Me too. I hugged my daughter, grateful that Rebecca had at least given me this. 11 years of being Emma's dad, of building something real with our daughter even if our marriage had been built on lies. My phone buzzed, a text from James, thinking about her today, hope you and Emma are doing okay. He texted occasionally, never pushing, never demanding anything, just present, a reminder that we'd both survived the same storm. I texted back, same to you, hard day but we're managing. His response came quickly, she would be proud of how you're handling this with Emma, you're a good father. Thanks, she would be proud of how you've handled it too. You're a good man, even if she didn't give you the chance to prove it properly. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, maybe that's her real legacy, teaching us both that we're stronger than we thought. I smiled sadly at the phone, maybe so. Epilogue 2 years after Rebecca's death. I was at Emma's school play when I saw him. James Morrison, sitting 3 rows back holding flowers. After the performance, I found him in the lobby. What are you doing here? I asked, not unkindly. Emma sent me an invitation, he said, looking sheepish. Through Rebecca's old email address that forwards to me. She said she wanted all the people who loved her mom to be there. I felt something in my chest, not quite anger, not quite warmth, something complicated. She didn't tell me. I almost didn't come, but, he shrugged helplessly. She's part of Rebecca, and I loved Rebecca so. Emma appeared then, still in her costume, her face lighting up when she saw the flowers. You came, she said to James. I did, you were wonderful. She hugged him, actually hugged him, and I watched this stranger who was somehow family comfort my daughter. Dad, Emma said, turning to me, is it okay if James comes to dinner? I want to ask him about Mom, the parts he knew. I looked at James, at his uncertain expression, at the flowers he'd brought, at the genuine care in his eyes when he looked at my daughter. Sure, I said, surprising myself, that's fine. Over dinner at our house, James told stories about Rebecca I'd never heard. Her fear of sharks despite living nowhere near the ocean. Her terrible singing voice that she insisted was just enthusiastic. Her competitive streak when playing board games. Emma laughed, hanging on every word, collecting pieces of her mother she'd never known existed. And I realized that this was the part Rebecca hadn't understood. Love isn't finite. It doesn't get diminished by being shared. Emma loving James's memories of her mother didn't make her love my memories less. Maybe that's what Rebecca had been trying to tell us all along. She'd just gone about it in the most destructive way possible. After Emma went to bed, James helped me clean up. Thank you, he said, for letting me be here, for not shutting me out of Emma's life. She needed to hear those stories, and I paused. Maybe I did too. Yeah, yeah, knowing that other version of her, the one I never got to see, it somehow makes her more complete, more real. She was extraordinary, James said quietly. She was, I agreed. Extraordinarily flawed, but extraordinary. Do you think she'd be happy, seeing us here co-parenting her memory? I thought about it. I think she'd be grateful, and guilty, and probably a little smug that she managed to keep two men in her life even after death. James laughed, a real laugh, not bitter or hollow. That sounds like her. It really does. As James left that night, he turned back at the door. Same time next month, Emma asked if I could come to her soccer game. You can come to whatever you want, I said. You were her husband too, maybe not legally, but in every way that mattered to her. Emma should know all the people who loved her mother. Even the inconvenient ones. Especially the inconvenient ones. That's what makes the story real. After he left, I stood in my living room, the room Rebecca had filled with lies and love in equal measure, and felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not entirely. Not forgetfulness, certainly, but maybe acceptance. Rebecca had loved two men completely and destroyed them both in the process. But from that destruction, she'd also created something unexpected. Two men who understood each other's grief, who could give Emma a fuller picture of her mother, and who had learned that people are never just one thing. Good or bad, truth or lies, love or betrayal. We're all of it, all the complicated, messy, impossible things at once. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything.